Welcome, everyone, to the Soul Tribe podcast. I'm Aunty Charmaine, where we value community, connection, devotion, herbalism, and all the other amazing things that brought our grandmothers together. We're keeping the traditions, and we are so excited to have you here with us.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the Soul Tribe podcast. It is Auntie Charmaine, and I am here with the lovely Whitney Mulling. She is an amazing Forbes coach, and she is taking everyone by storm by guiding us back to our own spiritual health and wellness and mental connection, and all the things. And so we are talking today about reclaiming our power, reclaiming our personal power, and how to stop people pleasing and setting healthy boundaries and creating confidence on our path. Welcome to the Soul Tribe, Whitney.
I'm so excited to be here, Charmaine. Thanks for having me. Such an honor.
You, you are very, very welcome, sweetheart. So we are going to jump right into it. The first conversation I would like to have is connecting with our personal power. I feel as though we are in a society that we give our power away, you know, with two fists, we give it away. We give it away because we want to fit in. We give it away because we feel powerless. We give it away at times because sometimes we don't know necessarily which direction to go. What were some moments when you felt you had given your power away?
Whoa. Um, okay. Whew. I feel like a onward of like rushing ideas because like we literally give our power away in different roles that we play and different aspects that we have within us. If I were to come to think of a time, it would be at the very beginning when I first wanting to start my business, right? And making those decisions of should I leave a salary job and then go build something from nothing, right? And so those are also those big moments that we often come back to ask ourselves, who do you think you are, right? And I think that example is coming to mind is because you want to make money, you want to make a living of yourself for yourself, and then you want to also be in service, in exchange of money and business. And so I think there's so many different like growing up to do at that stage, right? If that makes sense.
Mhm. Oh,
and
yeah.
and I think a very easy way to put in the terms of like how to give your power away, it's like, oh, if you want to be my client, I'll give you my firstborn child, whatever makes you happy. So I think, very, very like fundamentally, that's a way of giving your power away because, not really standing in the value of what you bring to the table for one.
Hmm, hmm.
And then also it was a very fine line in between of like being a stay-at-home mom, right? To return to work, to like put your CEO thinking cap on.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So a lot of pleasing will come in of the dynamic that we're all like really brought up under, like across cultures, right? The mom is the one who's supposed to be doing all the housework, to be the
Hmm,
nurturer, meaning the one who's cook, who cleans, right?
hmm, hmm, hmm.
Um, and so I think this is also like also what makes it even harder for women to step into motherhood, to go into
Mm.
entrepreneurship, or even to decide like to have a career because of all those different unspoken way of responsibilities on your shoulder. So a lot of times, like what I found to in the context of giving your power away, it's like you put yourself under the shoulds.
Mm.
Like, oh,
Hmm.
I should be keeping the house clean. I should be like the person telling the kids what to do, when to do, right?
Mm.
And not only the doing, but the planning, right?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
gotta research their development, get in touch with the teachers and then talk with other moms and compare notes. Like there's just so many ways
Mm,
in how to be a woman, and then all the different hats that you wear. Like in so many ways we learn to talk, to give our power away. I hope this will touch
mhm,
on, because like there's just so many ways of giving it away. And so when it's time to come back to be the leader of yourself, to be the leader of your own life, to decide that you want to live in your truth moment to moment, it's a very relearning of a process. How do you be fully in your personal power to make those powerful decisions, not because you want to please anybody, but because it fulfills your soul's mission, because it fulfills you in the alignment of, your truth, what brings you joy, what brings you
mhm.
like inner peace, and what you could
Oh,
feel good by and what you do.
oh, yeah. So what was some of those things? Because you mentioned about unlearning. I feel like as parents, we don't have the pamphlet that comes with this is your kid and don't screw it up. And I'm telling you, there's going to be some really great moments, but yep, it's just dirty business. Okay. I think sometimes people don't realize that a lot of this that we're going through is because we learned this behavior, whether from family intentionally or through cultural experiences. I've realized that a lot of the ways in which we've had to be strong and we've had to grow just the process. A lot of the things that we are experiencing then and now, we had to unlearn a lot of this. The hostilities, the angers for no reason,
Mm.
being hardened, not telling how you really feel, constantly complaining about the problem, but never placing your focus on all the many solutions afforded to you, those that you will like, those that you won't like. What are those aha moments that you can recall where you said to yourself, okay, this is stupid. I am not doing this like X, Y, and Z did it because it didn't work for them. It's not going to work for me.
Well, what really comes up very quickly is that I'm brought up in a Chinese culture type of household. So it's very much whatever the parent says goes. So even when the parents is wrong, okay, whatever they say, you just listen to them because they're my parents. So they're
Mm.
the person who gave birth to me. So it's under the context that the parents own their kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So just to simply put, that would be the feeling of it. And so it doesn't matter if you were to have done something, which I could pretty sure that you would recall as a mom, your perspective of it might have just jumped to conclusions what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might start, you know, I'm a yeller. I have to learn how to not to yell at my kids. So like, so many moments, so many examples that I could think of, like already jumping the gun and like scolding them. And then
Mm-hmm.
to realize, oh, so the perspective has shifted. It's like, oh, they didn't mean to do that intentionally. They just didn't
Mm-hmm.
know better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think a lot of the those are the moments where you just have your default reactions, because the
Mm-hmm.
intention is like you don't want them to grow up to be like little assholes.
I
Right.
completely understand.
So then, that's what I mean by unlearning, because a lot of them it's modeled to you. And so you just, when it happens to you in the moment of, there's no like real thinking of like, what should I do to step one, two, and three? Do you know what I mean? It's just a very, very quick
Right.
reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that those are the things that I have to often catch myself. And more importantly, what I would like to share is not to be too hard on yourself, because it's already a done deal. I'm speaking of all those moments already done. So it's coming back to learning how to forgive yourself and how you can internalize how you could act and do differently from the perspective that you have now obtained, right?
Right. And I think that's also because we've become conditioned to be about business all the time. There's not
Mm,
very much space for lighthearted energy. I think that's how it's been for some time. Society has created these conditions where we are on the grind trying to please the people at the job, on the grind trying to be everything everyone needs in your community, on the grind trying to be everything that everyone needs in your family. And then I think when these are these moments, I think they're meant to shock you back into the present versus you being so far off into the next adventure. Because that's what I've
mm,
seen with myself. You know, I'm here with you, we're having the conversation, but I'm already 2 minutes into the interview. You understand what
mm,
I'm saying? It's that
yeah.
it's that ability. And so I think a lot of times our children, they learn by example. You know what I'm saying? If they see mommy and daddy on the hustle and the bustle, well, guess what? They're not paying attention. I'm not paying attention. I'm just seeing what you're doing. Children mimic. And a lot of the times, again, it's that
Mm,
learned behavior. It's the things that children see that you don't say. I notice. My daughter, she's just turned
yeah.
22, and I noticed her mannerism is very much so like mine in the way she handles herself, in the way she articulates herself, in the way she desires to be heard. What happens when we forget the importance of speaking our truth and we sink into the people pleasing? How does that affect us mentally and emotionally where we can't get the spiritual connection?
Okay, so this is actually really so perfect because in my mind, I wanted to reiterate a little bit since we have touched on personal power, right? So like to me, I think our personal power is really our multidimensionality.
Mm,
We as human, have access, the ability to access our higher consciousness. So that's why we meditate, because when you go into
mhm,
that state, you're able to access your higher self. You're able to communicate with higher energies. So you're able to give yourself, to lead yourself into expanded perspectives, right?
mm,
And I think ultimately that's how I would sum it up for what spirituality really does, is so that you get to always be able to give yourself a different perspective. So when you
mm.
have a different perspective, then that's where you get choices,
Yep.
right? And I think that would be really coming to the power to answer your question, right? It's like when you have that connection
Mhm,
with yourself, then you be able to listen better, to access that inner part of your knowing. Like, it's not noisy, it's just
no,
a way of being. So you have your practice is because you get addicted to it once you get a taste of it,
you
right?
do. You do.
Yes. And so the way to out of people please, it is to exercise more of that power in yourself so that you get to know yourself. You get to know, oh, now I have a different perspective of what I have only known before. Now I see something different. And then
Mm,
in the in between, it's your choices. Do you want to be your old personality, or do you want to
mhm,
become someone new? And do you want to feel differently? How do you want to feel? Right?
mm,
What do you want to do next? And then you get to contemplate one step at a time. A lot of
mhm,
a lot of what I had always imagined, when I'm awake, you know, when I quantum leap, then my world would
mm.
look like 360 different. All right. But I think, today, especially on today's full moon, the energy is so
Mhm.
potent. I'm really, really feeling into like the dynamic of that
Yes.
different perspectives that we are talking about. The
Oh,
more and
yeah.
more I realized, anyone can lead a spiritual life. You don't need to
Yep.
speak spiritual terms. It's all coming back to, are you in a line with what you really truly want to do? And are you aligned and expressing what you want to say, right?
Mhm.
And I think people pleaser is ultimately coming back to, living in that old personality of not knowing yourself well enough, that only in the emotions of, oh, I don't want to offend anybody. I want them to
Mhm.
like me, right? So to get out of it, you have to come back to your own knowing of who you are. And even if no one else likes you, you love yourself. It has to come from that space, you
But
know?
Whitney, I love what you're saying because something just came to me. A lot of times I find people pleasers, they don't necessarily know what's theirs and what's someone else's.
Yeah.
They legit don't. There's no gray area. They take on someone else's. So
Yes.
whether it's someone else's burden, someone else's problem, someone else's concerns, someone else's persona because they may not attach too well with their own, it's always someone else's. How do we gauge the importance or put the emphasis on the importance of, we really need to discover what's ours and what's not. Listen, the attitude in which you have right now may not even be your own. It may be hurt and pain that was inflicted by somebody else and they just left it with you. And you just don't know how to get rid of it. Because our grandmothers taught us how to use salts to cleanse and clearing sprays and incense and all these wonderful tools that you use to change the environment. How do we put the emphasis on making your spiritual practice about you and only you?
hmm And I think it has to come back to your willingness to look, who am I in the moment? Like, you have to really come with that boldness that you spoke about before we
Mm.
start recording, right? You have to be brave to look in. A lot of the times, I think that genuinely, it's so funny. You say some people legit don't know, because there is a real fear sometimes to do this like hard inner work. I say hard is because it is really the hardest work when you have to like dive into your own subconscious and to really understand yourself, is because what if?
Mhm.
What if I'm really that terrible person? Like, what if I'm really incompetent? What if I'm really unworthy? And I think, like, just having that fear of like risking of knowing, like, what if the truth is that I'm really, really, really shit, you know?
Yeah. But what I
Yeah,
think would be worse is, what if I really was all these things and died like that? That would be what I would find to be far worse. Because then what would have been the purpose of life at all? It's like at
exactly.
some point, yeah, at some point you look at it and you say to yourself, this is insane. I kinda, yeah, roses really smell like boo boo. This ain't gonna work.
So going back to your question, I think that is like a really good example, because this is like what in this stage of my own practice, this is what I've been working on myself, especially this year. I feel the energy, it's not so much only in the energetic practice anymore. For
Mm,
people who's been practicing for a few years, it's really coming down into your beliefs, like your mental body and your physical body and your emotional body, because we're all of them, we're all of that. And so the embodiment, it's really in this physical dense, realm,
mhm, mhm,
that's what I'm
mhm.
really feeling into. And that, if I were to try my best to answer the question in this way, it's that, um, first and foremost, to practice your personal power, you got to have that space and time to connect
Yes.
so that you get to listen to yourself. So whatever that looks like for you, everyone is different. For me, I love my
Mhm.
meditation because that is when I get the clarity of like listening to myself, and I would journal out. Sometimes they come in very choppy, like I'll get like words,
Mm.
and then but it'll be able to lead me when I actually sit and journal. It will uncover something for me. So that's
Mm.
how I dive in as my daily ritual. But it changes as well. For a
Yes.
very long time, I need to sit in silence, but now I listen to different meditations. So now I even sometimes, what do I feel like today? Right. But then I always have my time and space. I always give myself time and space to do that before my day starts. But I also
Mhm.
have clients that cannot sit still. Meditation is not their thing. And so I'm like, okay, well, when are those moments for you where you can actually listen to your own thoughts? Because, there is a learning of what's your intuition. How do you listen to her? So some people are just like, oh, those are just me talking to myself in my head. But meanwhile, like, no, no, that's your intuition, right? So some
Mhm.
people actually need a workout. They need a hardcore workout before they could get into that
Mhm.
space of listening. And I,
Mm.
actually was just explaining to one of my friends because I've gone through yoga teacher training for 200 hours.
Nice.
And yeah, and the most surprising thing about the whole yoga practice that most people might not even realize is that the whole yoga sequence, they call it asana because those are your physical
Mhm.
poses, is to prepare you to go into meditation. So the whole yoga class, the
Mm.
whole hour yoga is to bring you into shavasana, is to bring you into meditation. That's a highlight of yoga practice, right? So, it looks different for everybody. You got to find your own
Yes.
daily connection. So, the best thing I could say for anybody who's like interested, who doesn't have one and wants one, is you just need to simply carve out that time and space and then figure it out, try it out, see what is for you, right?
Mm.
And now coming into my practice, like I have apprenticed with a shaman for a year long, and I still work with the same teacher over 7 years. And I still practice every single day into my own learning,
Mm.
mastering my own craft. Um, and what I want to say is that when you are in that energy and alignment with your soul, you keep your own energy clean and you don't
Mm.
need to energy clear as often. Because when you're
Mm.
so full in your own energy, there's no room for anything else to enter your space.
Mm.
So that's kind of
Yep.
where I'm really practicing now, right? But until you get into the point where you get to hold your own space to fill with your own light, where there's no space for other people, then you could go into even just the intentional of releasing energy that's not yours as a mantra, like
Mm.
especially when you go into a shower, you get to actually commune with the water to have that clear of your
Mm.
energetic field. It is like that's it.
Oh yeah.
It's actually so simple. All the things is not complicated. And but it all builds like in layers. So,
Yes, it does.
for anybody who really want to dive even deeper into their own practice, dive deeper into their power, dive deeper into their spiritual connection, even like clear your channel so you can listen better, it comes back to know yourself well. And that happens every day,
Yes.
every moment, right? And
Yes.
that's really what the embodiment is for me. It's really how
Mhm.
you live your day moment to moment because um you know it will come find you. You don't have to look as you lead your day, like anything
Yep.
you feel off by, like emotional, like roller coasters, a lot of the practice that I've done, a lot of the clearing had me realize how much rage I
Mm.
was living with. Like I was like easily so angry. And
Mm. Mhm, mhm.
and that tells you something. The emotions inside when you feel a certain way, it's a good sign. I mean, you might not feel good, but those are the signs like, hey, something is here for you to look at. So you get to actually release it.
Oh, I
And
love
when
that.
you, right? And when you're able to dive deep into like understanding yourself, "Oh, why am I feeling this way? Right?
Mm.
So then you get to actually contemplate yourself step by step. First and foremost, are you feeling anxious? Like, are you just with someone who's feeling anxious? So did you take on their anxiety, right? Or like,
Mhm.
no, 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 I'm just feeling this way. I'm not sure why. And then you have to go deeper, like, okay, well, ask yourself those questions, like, why are you feeling anxious? And then you go deeper, right? So I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. What's coming to mind is I was working with a client, well established, executive level at the corporate. So she's executive functioning, like
Mhm.
a leadership role, manage a team of people like over thousands, right? And so when we looked at her level of anxiety, you would think on the paper on the outside she's got it, like what are you anxious
Mhm.
about, right? And then when we have like dive deeper and deeper and deeper, it's very much in the old conditioning for one. It's like you have to be everything to everybody.
Mm.
The need to like really working yourself to the bone, working until like 1 a.m. just to get the day's work done, right? Um, but when I had asked her, like, but who holds you at such a standard? Because you need rest, and other
Mhm.
people can care for themselves. Her answer was profound. She's like, really no one else but myself. I'm like, oh, interesting. So where's that coming from? Right. So when you have dig deeper and deeper and deeper, it comes back to your roots of your upbringing because that's where
Yep.
you have learned who you are to be.
How
Mhm.
much more difficult does that make it when we are in an environment where we now have the control, but it's almost like the butterfly who doesn't realize that the lid is off? The butterfly that's been captured in the jar. You've been so used to bumping your head against these ceilings that you just no longer try. And so
Mhm.
now that the lid is off, are we seeing that this is the time for all of the lessons that we've learned, all of the things that we've gained, all of the understandings that we had to fight for, all of the things that came easy and those things that didn't come so easy? How do we get to the space where we're flying out of the jar and no longer just wishing that we could?
I think it's really coming back to moment to moment. It's a very micro thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it is.
So no different than one of my other client who's doing really well, multi six figure, but
Mm,
feeling so trapped and so burnt out, right?
mm,
And we
mhm,
didn't really do anything like, 5-year plan or anything like that. But let's just get back to the basics of like, how do
mm,
you feel in this
mhm,
moment, right? Like what's in front of you that's really taxing your energy? What's really
mhm,
taxing your way of thinking, right?
mhm,
And,
mhm,
we talk about people pleasing and wanting to be liked, wanting to belong. Um, you know, all of those will come back. It
mhm.
really doesn't
I
really
agree.
stop ever if you work through it before. It will just come back at a different level. And I think this is all part of the evolution of our soul. And in fact, if we have finished working, healing, and evolving, then you would have ascended, like you would die from this plane of
Yeah.
existence. Right? So I feel like, that's what
Mhm,
I touched on earlier. Even me in that same thinking of like, oh,
mhm,
like when I'm
mhm,
finished doing this work, then my life would look drastically different. But the more and more I realize, especially this year, it's really coming into the moment. And a
mhm,
lot of the times is when you make a different choice, when you choose to think different, you choose to feel different, you choose to do things differently than what you would have done just a day ago, like the old version of yourself. That is a shift. That is a breakthrough. And then when you do it little by little, then things starts to change. So it could be just so
Mm-hmm.
subtle, but then you build upon one on the other, into that
Oh yeah.
directions of like feeling in alignment with who you are, speaking really what you want to say. And sometimes I don't mean like holding your tongue back and not really speaking honestly, but to that deep level of speaking your truth is how are you feeling? What emotions is coming up? Because with emotions, it comes with judgment. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times, I don't know if this is before we cut off, I was talking about my other client, very successful on the outside, but feeling so anxious, so burnt out, so far from feeling inner calm, is because she's still holding herself up against this level of expectations, of level of excellence that she needs to show up for everybody, for everything, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because of those like energy of from parents of like saying to her don't be
Mm-hmm.
lazy, or even those like not actual things that have said or happened, but that's the remembering that she has, right? Oh, I gotta do
Oh,
better. I
and
gotta.
the expectation.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not even something bad actually happened, but it's just because her brother had like more I guess competitive sports, and so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
celebrating him, where she has
Ah.
felt, oh, right, I'm not as good, and so I don't get the attention. You see, that's just the way how growing up sometimes is, because those become your stories. And it just
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is nestled deep in your subconscious, in your beliefs, until you realize, oh, of course that's not true. Then those are the moments when you contemplate, where is it coming from, right? And who am I
Yep.
now to decide how do I want to lead? Am I the one who's leading, or is the little girl in me that's leading, right? Am I going
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to choose even if I'm not the best? So what? Even if I'm not
Yep.
the best out there, so what? Right? Then you could do better. You could get better at your craft, but there's always going to be that snapshot in the present moment that you are perfectly where you are. So you're as good as you can get to right now. And that's okay.
Mm.
So like I
Yes.
think I think
Yes,
it,
it
it
is.
comes with touching a lot of like how we measure ourselves, because society had taught us, from school you need to get good grades, it's like picking you against a kids in your own class. Who's ranked number one,
Right.
number two,
Right.
number three, so it's very
Mm-hmm.
institutionalized the way how we always like put things on the scale.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you know what's interesting too is that each culture has a different way and a different barometer in which to measure success. So what I found was in Western culture, it is the things you obtain is a remnant of the success that you have. In other cultures, it's the legacy you leave behind. I'm finding that we've created our identity, our soul's essence based on other people and their expectation. We then go through our first Saturn return and we then have this aha, okay, I'm a real adult now. I'm not even joking. I'm a real adult. Then you go into your 40s and you go from sitting idle thinking you know and knowing more than you did in your 20s. But certainly by the time you get to your 40s, now you're playing with the energy. It is clear. It is no, oh, I think I see you. There's a knowing when you are in the
Mhm.
body, when you connect with the experienced, when you've connected with the changes and you can actually see that you have decades behind you where you could actually measure and see how much you've changed. I think I've went through that here recently when I was just sitting with myself and I'm like, I've changed a lot. Like I've
Mhm.
grown a lot. The way I feel is very different um, from the way it was before. The way I see the world, the way I see people, my tolerance of what now I can accept in my reality. The
Mm.
My appetite for life has changed considerably because you go from being a young woman to being a grown ass woman, and that is a very different dynamic. Very, very different dynamic in the way you present yourself. I'm having to find that even with my own clients, that I'm having to connect them to the essence of who they
Mhm.
really are. And I find that we quickly get there when we see it in the bloodline. What are some of the traditional things that, like, even in my day-to-day practice, some of my spiritual practices are is that I literally will get up, make my tea, go to my porch, and sit with myself for a good few hours before my day starts. And my evening ends with something cleansing, something I'll read, something I'll engage with that'll give me inspiration. How do we connect ourselves as teachers, practitioners, spiritual healers, and all of the things that are in the mix of spirituality? How do we then connect those who are coming, who are hungry, who are thirsty, who are looking to be fed? How do we do that from a standpoint where you can recognize your gifts and talents and then connect someone to theirs?
What I had found in my experience is that, this is no different than what you mentioned earlier as a mom. A lot of the things that you don't really say, but you lead by the way that you live, so the children looked at it as what's modeled to them. It's in the same.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is exactly what I have found, is that the more you connect with yourself to know yourself well, then you be able to see, say, your clients in this example, right? That you've mentioned, you help them to connect with their essence. You get to see
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
clear because you've been there, but then also is the way that you express it. They
Hmm.
hear it different when you've done your work. That's what I find.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Oh yeah.
it comes back to how you lead your life, you know, from your practice. So it comes back to that part of embodiment. How do you actually, you know, be the example of living spirituality in your day-to-day life? It's really the how, that's what I
Hmm.
find. Because at some point on my learning along the way, I thought to myself, oh, I got to learn how to speak it better, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
need to learn how to communicate this better, um, and so that I can get through to my clients. But then I swear to
Yes.
you, sometimes even after saying what I say in the moment, and I collect myself, and I had to like ask them, like, oh my gosh, like I felt like I just ramble, like everything just sounds so choppy, like, but did you get that? And they most often would say, yeah, I totally get it. Sometimes like
Hmm.
if a
Hmm.
third person were to be a fly on the wall and listening to the conversation, I don't think they would understand. But there is that unspoken way of understanding when you're like in that energy. So I'm not saying
Yes.
like you don't need to learn how to communicate better, um, but I think to the first and foremost, the most important thing is to lead from that energy. But this is what I have also found recently is that At some point, the power of your belief is very important to inform yourself of who you are. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
then, there is such power to the way you think. So there is a power to mindset work. So in my own
Mm.
experience, I hired mindset coaches because like in business, I wasn't able to hit my next level. So I'm doing all the right things, like I've got my clients, but how can I expand? And for a little while I couldn't. And so it was recommended to me to hire a mindset coach. It's a mindset thing, right? And so I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever it takes. So I hired this mindset coach. I've learned a ton from her, but I wasn't able to move, like to have that up
Mm-hmm.
level that I wanted. But what I've learned is all of these like tools to like working my mind into diving deeper into those subconscious beliefs to break through on.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I have found is the work has sent me in loops, right? So I think you would resonate with this because to me, you're more of an intellect. So
Mm.
you rely a lot of your intelligence, and it has taken you to where you are, right? To rely on your
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. There's nothing that you ask your brain that it would not produce an answer for you. So that's why a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us rely on our smarts because there's nothing that you can't think your way through. But then when you do this type of work, I found it to be so hard, to ask
Right.
myself to until my face turns blue. It's like, I don't know anymore. Why do I want to make more money? Because all I could think is like, I want to make more money, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, for me at that point, it was because I couldn't just go into my mental body to go deeper into knowing myself better. That's when I started to learn shamanic journeying, is to go into the
Mm.
energetics, where in the energetic, the practice of like shamanic journeying had took me into a different realm that had actually opened me up to dive deeper what's going on in my subconscious. So,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
second part to that answer is that sometimes you could work, you know, through your vision to lead you through. Because, like, if sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you have a vision, you know where you're going, and then all the lessons that you need to work through will come up. But sometimes it's energetics. Sometimes you just have to go on a journey and a meditation or different modalities. There's so many energetic practices out
True.
there like Reiki, right? Like past life regression. You know,
Mm-hmm.
s- one of my clients is certified in QHHT, but I can't even tell you what it stands for right now. Like there is a ton
Mm.
out there, and they all
Mm-hmm.
serve a different function. So go find the thing that's right for you. Like that's really
Right.
what I would love to share in my own experience. It's like sometimes you do one thing, it might not take you deep, and then you could try energy healing. And because they all work hand in hand, once you go in, it dissolves a little bit where you get in tune with your subconscious, and then you get to wrap it up in your mindset work. How can you neutralize those emotional charges to kind of lead yourself, out of those lessons and come back to, where you want to live, you know, like in anger
Right.
or in
And
love, right?
oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that's what this is. I think what people are finding is that there's no shortcuts to this. You have to do the work, no matter
Yeah.
how hard it is, and it's gonna take you around the loops. And the truth of the matter is, I think we're all born with an innate spiritual intelligence. The problem is there's very few of us who are willing to trust it. I think we are
Yeah.
told to turn these gifts off. We are showed to turn these talents off. So when you tell a person, that you're psychic, when you tell a person that you're a medium, when you tell a person that you're clairvoyant or claircognizant and all the other clairs that the world has ever recorded, but my grandmother, instead of saying that, would just say, baby got the gift. We understand that these are things that we have learned to turn off, but they came with us from these other lives in order to help guide us. How do we allow ourselves to be bold in the fact that we understand who we are in these talents, in these gifts, and then how to apply them?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been asking myself that question like year over year, every cycle of growth, like when you go to the next level, there's always a space where it feels tough, feels like nothing is working, the
Mm,
contraction. And like those are the moments I find
hmm
myself asking myself those questions over and over again, right? Um,
hmm
so I really love what you said earlier. When I was trying to say sometimes when you live in the fear of like, what if you're really not good enough, right? And then you said,
hmm
well, maybe you aren't, and God loves you the same way. And I think that is actually where the growth is when you're okay where you are, you know?
Yep.
And
hmm
that,
hmm
to be okay with where you are, because sometimes I think our mind always like have an idea of who you should be at this time, and I think that to your point, this is all
Yeah.
part of that conditioning, like, oh, I'm in my 40s, so I should be in this in my career. I should make this amount of money. I should have already the kids and the house and the car. So then
Mm-hmm.
what happened is we always have all these like things, but also when you come into practicing of like, well, what's your vision, right? It's very
Yep.
easy to put ourselves like, oh, I'm not where I want to be or where I should be. I should be further along. And I think that has also been one of the things that has stopped me personally. Like it literally blocks your energy, right? And it also keeps you in that frame of, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not I'm
Mm,
not enough, right? So it
mm.
comes back into those everything that we talked about up until now. Like since the very beginning of this conversation, it's you need to exercise your personal power to come into that moment of who you're being, um,
Mm.
in your power, in your presence, you know? It's like no different than when you mother it's mothering your kid. If you keep scolding them, they're not going to go out and do things in full confidence in who they are. Do you know what I mean? Or
No.
happily,
Hmm.
joyfully, and
Oh, yeah.
and like and go and do the thing with wonder and curiosity, no
No.
expectations, not
Mm-mm.
not knowing what's going to happen next, but just go give it your all type of moment. And I come to realize slowly and slowly how those internal subconscious belief and also those like internal dialogue with yourself, so much
Oh,
so
yeah.
of my parents too, right? It's like, oh, let's just see when you're going to fail, with the intention
Mm.
of, oh, maybe if I talk down to you, then you work harder, right? It's
Oh,
so
wow.
silly. Yeah. And so it's really coming to every present moment. It's
Oh, yeah.
how you
Oh, yeah.
decide. You have to make those decisions of who you want to be, who you're becoming, and who you're being. I hope this makes sense, and I hope this carries through because of this whole conversation. I think this is the
Oh,
key.
yeah.
I think this is it. If you take
Yep.
nothing from this,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is it. It's the fact that in every moment, you got to sit with yourself and come into those, I'm good. And
Yep.
maybe I'm not the best in what I want to do, but I am here, I'm good, and I'm at my best. And if you can be in that energy, you're going to grow and expand. like you say, you have grown so much in your 40s opposed to your 20s, right? Think about that.
Oh
That
yeah.
can happen
Oh
every
yeah.
day,
Oh yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I know it's easier said than done because I speak to this a lot because I think confidence, it's not by doing. Because at some point really early on in my self-development, one of my mentor has said, you build confidence by doing. Each time you break away your fear and go and
Hmm.
do something, then you build your confidence. I mean, it's not all wrong, but how do you lead your life and go into the directions like things that you've not experienced or done? Like goal settings. Like the whole point of goal settings is to achieve something you've never had done before, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
how do you hold yourself in that place of confidence, of trusting that what you set your eyes on will happen, that you will get there with that level of trust? How?
It's so funny, sweetheart, because I actually think that is the understanding that we all come to when we realize that this is a co-creation. When not by just your might and power can you make something happen. There is something
Mhm.
about being humbled as a human and realizing that this is not solely for your shoulders. This is built for something greater. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, really, if I had to solely
Yeah,
depend on myself, then look, we all doomed, okay? Every last one of us. If we are all
yeah,
doomed. Because the truth of the matter
mhm,
is, we carry that energetic energy within us. There's no way in the world that we could be helpless or hopeless. These are all things and concepts and precepts that we have to first agree to in order to push it out. So if we can agree to the negative, we also have to be willing to agree to the positive and being able to push it out nonetheless. Because it's all about how you use
yeah,
the energy. It's all in how you use and work the energy. If you're one of those
yes.
type of people who are presented with two things, one is an obstacle that can lead to greater results, and the other one is an easier way of being, the average person who's looking for comfort and not growth are going to choose the easier path. But what if the other one was what was best for you? Sometimes life has to render what is best for you in order for you to grow.
Yeah, yeah. There's just so much in that. A little bit that you said, there's just so much in that. Um, but first and foremost, yeah, like if you think about the co-creation there, you're speaking of co-creating with the universe, right?
Oh, yes.
So like
Almost certainly.
we're all created from that union of love of the universe. So the co-creating really comes from you need to first and foremost connect with your soul, then you would have that level of understanding that you're co-creating, meaning you're equal with the universe. It's not a dynamic of one is better than the other. We're all coming from that same love. So then you get to have
Mhm.
these knowings of knowing that you're born abundant and that you have this power to
Oh, yeah.
create your reality, and that when you create from that same love, you can actually manifest it into whatever it is in tangible forms of the life that we live. But
Oh, yeah.
what we often do not think about is you also co create with one another because we're all from the same energy.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is all coming back to practicing your personal power. It's within. If you know yourself
Yes.
well and have those practices in your own pillar of light, compassion and love for yourself,
Yes.
your choice in every moment, then that's what radiates out of you. That's is what going to emanate out of you. And that is what the impact that you would have that you won't even know because the way that you uplift the world, it's from that, right? It's not about how many clients
Oh,
you
yeah.
work with a month. It's not about who
That's
you
right.
talk to, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's a good reminder that our impact is the way of your being, because
Oh
we're
yeah.
all in that energy, and that just it. When you talk about legacy, that's really the legacy. If you're able to live
Oh
by
yeah.
that every day, then you uplift,
Mm.
right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so, and I think confidence and personal power is one of the same, because when you're
Oh
in
yeah.
that power, there is that level of race and trust, you know, that you will overcome
Hmm.
any challenge. And there's that race of trust that the universe will deliver what it is that you want. And there's
Oh
that
yeah.
trust, that you would receive the abundance that life has to offer. So a lot of the times that we don't have things that we want, like you say, is because we're so in the lower emotions, right? We're so living in the fear. People pleasing is the
Mm.
fear of being judged, the fear of not being liked. But that's the other side of love. So if you could put it into the context of that emotional scale, you
Hmm.
block yourself from actually receiving the abundance that's available to you. So I'm pretty sure, if I were to say, if you recall a time where somebody rubs you the wrong way and
Oh
you
yeah.
don't like a certain person, right? And then you do your own inner work. And then whatever that you work through, there is going to be that raised level of understanding, that raise of, compassion. And then you just diffuse whatever that you have with that person. And then
Oh
you
yeah.
would realize,
Oh
oh
yeah.
my gosh, like all along, there's nothing wrong with you. That person actually had liked you so much from the beginning, but you're just thinking that
Hmm.
person doesn't like you because the way that you walk or the way you talk. Have you ever had those?
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have. And
so
then there have been moments when I have been the person who met a person and did not know anything about you and knew I did not like you. There was something about you that I could not put my finger on it, but there was something about you that I just didn't like. And I honored that as well because it's that silent intelligence, that inner intelligence that you were talking about that I hold and honor and cherish because I now see the value. You know, when we was coming up, it used to be we would say things like, "Oh, I should have listened to my earth mind. I know I shouldn't have listened to da, and then you fill in the blank. Well, then you realize as you get older that that's the component, the compass that comes in, and it doesn't require your validation. All it requires is for you to pay attention. So I get exactly what you're saying. But then again, I also understand the flip side of feeling a way about a person and knowing I don't like that person and seeing later on why I didn't care for
yeah, yeah. And I could see that because by the way you lead yourself by boldness, like you make many, many bold moves, against the grain. And it's pretty triggering to most people. So I could totally see that. And so sometimes it's about how you hold that level of compassion, hold yourself. Um, I think that would be a different conversation, but it does take a lot of you to know yourself well to hold that mirror for other people. But it's so funny because I don't know why that came over me, but I thought that was just a good example to like kind of illustrate how the energy works when I talk about, are you open to receiving the abundance? It's
them.
not like it's so easy in your mental mind. It's like, of course I open. I want to receive billions of dollars. You know what I mean? But it's very much energetic exchange, and I think it comes back to that.
Mm.
All conversation comes back to that. And when you're in your own personal power, meaning when you know yourself well, you can hold your own light and uphold yourself and that energy, then you become the mirror for other people. And when you are
Oh
in
yeah.
the reflection, then you be able to be aware enough to know, oh, something's being reflected of inside of me. So
Oh
those
yeah.
are the
Oh yeah.
moments that have the choice, like, do you investigate and contemplate within yourself what's going on so you could break free of it, right? And so a lot
Mm.
of what you've touched on in practicing your personal power and restoring that power to like renewing that power, it's coming from these micro choices that we make, like probably
Oh yes.
multiple times through the day, right?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Like for me, I've learned very early on about, oh, you got to also be mindful of what you say to yourself, right? And
Oh
your
yes.
choice of words as well. Like, how do you talk to others? How do you talk to yourself? So this is like years and years before when I start doing this work, and I feel like I've already worked through this. But I kid you not, just very like recently, probably in the last month, it's when I also realized, oh, there is that inner voice coming back in, like that I fail at everything, that I don't stick
Mm.
at anything, right? So
Mm.
I don't know if you can recall like things come back.
Hmm. It does. It does. And the reason why it does, I find even just with myself, is because it was not properly followed all the way through. So I would get these breaking points when it would only come to a certain point, and then something in my life would energetically happen, and then I would have to stop the healing process. Here recently, excuse me, I've been pushing myself to continue to follow through because it doesn't mean I don't get squished. It doesn't mean I don't feel the pressure. It doesn't mean that I don't feel the discomfort. What it is no longer am I focused on the discomfort. No longer am I focused on the challenge. I'm looking at, okay, what am I to learn from this? Because I refuse to do this again. I need to learn a new lesson, but not the same lesson. What do I need to learn from this? So I will sit with myself and look at the circumstances as it is, the way it is, and allow myself to see, yeah, these are the effects of what has happened. What did I gain? I think a lot of times we need to understand that our challenges are just a mirror of how we see what the prism is in the mind. And so if we're like you was mentioning before, mindset. So if we're allowing ourselves to almost take the blue pill, red pill, okay,
Mm.
allow yourself to understand this matrix for real, understand what is theater and what is not, and understand how not to copy and paste other people's worlds, existences within your own life, allowing yourself to be your most authentic self. Listen, I'm a little quirky, I'm a little strange. I have a very bold and boastful personality. Listen, that's never going to change. That's just my essence. However, it's the way in which I put it out into the world. Can I be that bold and brazen for something that's right? Can I allow my voice to continue to grow and flourish and thrive in an environment where I'm inspiring people to be their best versions of themselves, reclaiming their personal power as we discussed, and understanding that people pleasing doesn't make you more liked or more authentic. What it does is it separates you more and more from that consciousness that we were talking about before.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is so good. It's really, like a whole conversation on its own, isn't it? Because what's coming up as you're explaining is that, you could be living in alignment. It doesn't mean it's easy,
No,
right?
it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's
So sometimes what you hold yourself to doing, like, to push through, in that way of it, like breaking it down, it would be like pushing through fear and pushing through judgment.
not. Oh, yes.
And those are like, you know, and so those are the things that you would push through is because there is that greater purpose behind it,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
So,
Oh,
like, I
yes.
think it comes back to when you're able to align yourself with your personal power and know yourself from that deep, deep, deep space of connection. Like, that's your soul mission that you're touching on. So, that's
Mm.
your motivation because that's your soul's work, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
when you talk about doing the hard things, it would be to really unravel, like that to me would be the hard work, is unravel those subconscious, the lower consciousness that you're wanting to change into the higher ones, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So then it's very different than the example that I tried to give earlier, like the way the burnouts, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
when you are feeling burnout for one, or you are feeling anxious, like when you're feeling in those lower emotions, it's your brain also telling you somewhere it's out of alignment. And usually it's working towards meeting the outside expectations, you know,
Oh, yeah.
um, like outside expectations, or like try to achieve something that's outside of you. Just because someone says,
Oh, yeah.
if you're like want to be successful, you should make this amount of money, right?
Mm.
Um, so like those are the moments where when you push and force yourself into something that's not in your soul, that's not part of your soul's mission, we could do that. We've been doing that for millennia because of our willpower. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but that would be a different type of hard because it will never fulfill you. Then you'll always be
No.
just stuck, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, it's funny because we see a bunch of people who have a bunch of money, and that doesn't mean that they're fulfilled at all. I mean, really,
Yeah.
do you honestly see how so many people right now, economically, people are scrambling, economically, countries are scrambling, and economically, communities are scrambling? Everybody is trying to find where they fit in. What we're not seeing again is that all of these challenges you cannot overcome if there wasn't something there giving resistance. Resistance has its place because what it does is it allows you to see how powerful you are. So you can reclaim your personal power. You can't reclaim personal power if there's no obstacle to reclaim it for. So
Yeah.
using that sense of understanding, my grandmother used to have a saying when I was a kid. She used to say, "Well, I never said that the road was going to be easy."
Mm.
Come on now, because if you know, you know. No one ever said that the road was going to be easy. But that's the point. The road was never meant to be easy, it was meant to be lived. And your
Mm.
spiritual, astrological makeup, you are naturally created to carry the mantle for which your life requires. It's
Yeah.
already built in. No one is born on the same day at the exact same time, not even twins. So when we
Yeah.
know this, since we understand this, we understand that it's important to know that even with your challenges, there is an autocorrect within the DNA. It is your astrology. It is your connection to the universe. How did it timestamp you on the day that you were born? That's telling you what you're capable of withstanding. So therefore, you
Mhm.
already won. You already
Mm.
got the cheat
Mm.
sheet. You already got
Mhm.
the cheat sheet to how to overcome the obstacles. It's a matter of, are we quiet enough to pay attention? Are we listening? Are we applying the laurels that we gained and the wisdoms that we've understood? Are we using this? This is an applied science, not just some kind of woo woo out in the universe. And that's where it remains.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up, you know,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. It's really beautiful
Oh, I
because it's
agree.
true. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, it is. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining me and Whitney Mulling, the amazing. who came to enlighten us and encourage us on how to reclaim our personal power. Understand that it's not going to be easy, but it's always going to be worth it. And I'll be here with you every step of the way. Peace and love, y'all.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Aunty Charmaine, and I am a constant reminder to our tribe to connect mind, body, and soul as we talk everything spirituality, everything herbalism, and all amazing things in between. I am the auntie of the community. Peace and love, y'all.